stayed last night at a paid campsite for the first time. I didn't get in until about 1 a.m. in the morning, but ended up working out really well. It was really quiet, there really wasn't anybody around, I slept well, the weather was perfect, and now I've got access to nice bathrooms and clean showers. But let's be real, I didn't stay here because it was a quiet place to park. There's literally quiet places to park everywhere. We're in the middle of nowhere right now. I didn't pay $24 to camp here for the free shower. There's a Planet Fitness only a few miles down the road, and I didn't do it for the free coffee either, although it's been really nice after being up so late driving last night. You see, today's the day that I become a resident of the great state of South Dakota. I paid for the campsite basically for this piece of paper right here. It's a receipt that has my South Dakota address on it, and it's the first step in becoming a resident of the state. In order to get your license in the state of South Dakota, you have to spend one night, just one night, at a hotel or a campground anywhere in the state and have a receipt to prove it. So what's the point? Why is it beneficial for full-timers to establish residency in South Dakota? There are quite a few reasons that make South Dakota one of the most common states for full-timers to establish residency. For one, there is no state income tax here. So for tax purposes, it can be very beneficial, especially if you have income higher than what I have. For two, South Dakota does not require any sort of annual vehicle inspection. So no safety testing, no emissions testing or anything like that. So that means that if you're traveling, you're on the road and you're away from the state for 2 or 3 years or more at a time, you don't have to worry about coming back to get that taken care of. And for three, vehicle insurance tends to be a lot cheaper here than it is in other places in the country. For me, I'm expecting my rates to drop by about 50% when I transfer from New Orleans to South Dakota. So I'm now officially a South Dakota resident. The whole process was really easy to get taken care of. It only took about 2 or so hours, maybe 2.5 hours, to go to the 3 different locations and get everything set up and established. I now have a South Dakota driver's license. My vehicle, the Element, is registered in South Dakota, and I have a mailbox set up and a mail forwarding service agreement all done and taken care of. I do want to go into detail about these 3 steps and what it took to get everything set up for anybody that is out there considering registering their RV or their van or their vehicle in South Dakota and making the move to establish domicile here in the state. The first step was getting set up with a private mailbox to use as my residential address here in South Dakota. There's a company that does that here in Madison, South Dakota called My Dakota Address. They've got a website, it's mydakotaaddress.com. I'll put a link in the description below. And they essentially exist to serve the full-time community, all full-time RVers and whatnot that want to establish residency. They were super helpful and I definitely recommend checking them out. They had all the paperwork that I needed to sign to make sure that I had the whole mailbox set up and the whole mail forwarding service agreement was all set up. They also had the paperwork for my license and for my registration of the vehicle, so I could basically fill it all out there with their supervision to make sure that I wasn't messing anything up too bad, and then I could go on to the next 2 steps. So as you can probably gather, the second step was to get my license all taken care of. So I went over to the DMV. I know I mentioned in a previous video that the DMV in this town is only open on Tuesdays, so that's why I made it such a point to get over here by Tuesday. But I went over there, I already had all the paperwork filled out, so I gave them the paperwork. I needed to have that receipt though with the campground that I stayed at for one night, so I showed them that. I also showed them another receipt. I needed to have a second receipt with that address on it, so that was the receipt that I got from the mailbox rental that I had done in the first step, and I gave that information to them. It was really easy, like I said. They gave me a license within a few minutes and I was on my way. And the final step was to drive a few blocks down the road and head to the Treasury Department, which was located in the local courthouse. I walked right in there with my title and my registration information from Louisiana and just got it all transferred over. I already had all the paperwork from the first step and I basically just needed to hand them everything and sit there and then pay for it. They gave me the new license plates on the spot and I'm about to get them installed on the Element right now. Regarding the total cost for the whole thing, it was $72 to register the Element for the year. That was a little bit higher than I was expecting, but the fact that there's no state inspection on the vehicle probably has something to do with why it's a little bit higher. There was a $10 fee to transfer my title from Louisiana to South Dakota, and the cost to get my license was only $28. And the final expense was the cost to rent the mailbox for the year. I believe it was $108 exactly to rent it for 1 full year, and then they also charge a $50 postage fee on top of that, which essentially is just an account worth $50 that they can pull money out of over the course of the year when I call up and ask to have something forwarded to me. So if I call them and say, hey, do you guys have any mail for me? And they say, yeah, we got a couple of pieces of mail. I can say, all right, we'll stick it in an envelope and send it to this address wherever I am in the country, and then they'll take money out of that $50 and apply it to the postage fee to basically send that stuff to me. So overall, the total cost for everything, including 1 year of mailbox rental, postage fees, registration, license, and the one night at the campground, was just under $300. It was like $280 something for everything. So for me, definitely worth it. I've already switched my insurance over to South Dakota, and the amount that I'm saving on that alone makes this a worthwhile investment. There are a couple of things to consider though. For one, when you do this whole thing, when you're setting up at the DMV and getting your license, you have to sign a form. The form states that you're a resident of South Dakota, but that you're traveling and that at some point in the future you plan to come back to South Dakota and settle here. Obviously, that some point is incredibly vague. It could be at any point, 5, 10, 15, 20 years or whatever it is, but it's something to think about. And the second thing to consider is healthcare. Here in South Dakota on the ACA, I believe there are only 2 healthcare providers, so rates could be a little bit higher here. I'm not really sure about that. I haven't looked into it, but it seems pretty likely. And then there's also just the idea that if you do have an HMO plan here in South Dakota through the ACA, and you're off traveling anywhere else in the country and you have to get back here for healthcare, it's pretty far out of the way, especially if it's in the wintertime. It could be really difficult to get here. For me, it's not really an issue because I'm on an alternative healthcare plan through a health cost sharing ministry that's accepted anywhere in the United States. But for some people, it's probably something to think about. I hope this video was helpful for some of y'all who are considering maybe registering your vans or RVs in South Dakota and establishing residency there. For me, it seems like it was the right decision. It seems like it's going to help save me money over the next few years. It's something that I was thinking about for a while, and the process ended up being really easy and something that I think is going to be worth it. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to y'all in the next video.